Ladies and gentlemen, in a world full of noise, silence is a rare treasure. We live in an age of constant chatter on phones, social media, news, and even in our own minds. But what if I told you that silence is not emptiness? It's full of answers. Silence is not weakness. It is power. The quietest person in the room is often the one who listens the most, thinks the deepest, and acts the wisest. When we are silent, we gain control over our words, our reactions, and most importantly, our inner world. Think about it. When we react too quickly, we make mistakes. When we speak too often, we reveal too much. But when we choose silence, we gain perspective. We become observers. We study people. We understand situations. And in that stillness, we grow. Silence also helps us master emotional intelligence. It gives us the pause we need to respond calmly instead of reacting rashly. It helps us reflect before we speak, and often we realize that some words never needed to be spoken at all. Great leaders, thinkers, and mystics all had one thing in common. They valued silence. They knew it was the space where ideas are born, where self-control is built, and where wisdom lives. So don't be afraid of being quiet. Don't rush to fill every pause. Let your silence speak. Let it build your strength, sharpen your focus, and protect your peace. Because in silence you don't lose power, you gain it. Self-control is one of the most powerful traits a person can possess, and silence is one of its greatest teachers. In a world that often rewards quick reactions and instant opinions, silence allows us to pause, reflect, and choose our responses wisely. When emotions rise, whether it's anger, frustration, anxiety, or even excitement, our first instinct is usually to speak. We feel the urge to defend ourselves, prove a point, or express how we feel immediately. But this impulsive expression often leads to misunderstandings, regrets, and emotional exhaustion. Silence, on the other hand, gives us a buffer between stimulus and response. It creates a space where we can process what's really going on, both externally and internally. In that space, we gain clarity. We begin to see the situation from different angles, not just through the lens of our emotions. That simple act of pausing, of staying silent, can prevent an argument, save a relationship, or stop us from making a decision we'll later regret. Think of it like this. Every time you remain silent instead of snapping back or blurting out something unfiltered, you're exercising a mental muscle. And like any muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Over time, this builds incredible emotional discipline. You learn to master your urges, regulate your reactions, and stay grounded even in the face of chaos or provocation. Silence also helps you resist the pressure to always have an opinion or answer on the spot. It reminds you that it's okay not to respond immediately. In fact, sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. That doesn't mean you're weak or unsure. It means you're in control. It means you're choosing peace over ego, patience over pride, and intelligence over impulse. When you practice silence, you are not just staying quiet. You are actively choosing your battles, conserving your energy, and holding your power. You're telling yourself and the world, I don't need to prove anything through noise. My calm is my strength. In today's fast-paced world, real listening has become a lost art. Most people don't truly listen. They just wait for their turn to speak. But silence flips that dynamic. When you choose to stay silent, you give yourself the chance to become an active, intentional listener. You move from hearing words to actually understanding them, which is a rare and powerful skill. Silence is the foundation of deep listening. It removes distractions, both external and internal, and centers your attention on the speaker. You're not formulating a rebuttal or thinking about your own experience while someone is talking. You're fully present, and people can sense that. When you listen in silence, people feel heard, respected, and valued. That, in itself, builds trust and stronger relationships. Moreover, true listening allows you to pick up on things others often miss: tone of voice, hesitation, emotions behind the words, and what's not being said. Sometimes the real message lies between the lines, and only someone listening closely in silence can catch it. That gives you an edge in both personal and professional settings. Whether you're dealing with clients, friends, coworkers, or family, being a good listener makes you more influential and more respected. Silence also enhances empathy. It slows down the moment enough for you to feel what the other person is feeling. You can better understand their perspective because you're not filtering it through your own noise. This builds compassion and allows you to connect with others on a deeper level. Listening in silence isn't passive, it's incredibly active. You absorb information more accurately, you remember details others forget, and often people will open up to you more simply because you gave them space and didn't interrupt. That's when conversations become meaningful instead of just transactional. So, when you practice silence, you're not just being quiet. You're elevating your ability to listen, understand, and respond with intention rather than impulse. You become the person everyone wants to talk to, not because you talk the most, but because you listen the best. When you choose silence, you give yourself permission to watch the world more closely. In silence, you become an observer, not just of others, but of situations, patterns, and subtle details that most people miss. Observation is a skill that gets sharper when you're not constantly focused on speaking, reacting, or asserting your opinions. And the more you observe, the more aware, insightful, and strategic you become. Think about the moments when you've walked into a room full of people. Those who remain quiet at first often pick up on the energy of the room faster than those who rush to speak. They notice body language, unspoken tension, who holds influence and who follows whom. These silent observers can read between the lines because they are not distracted by the need to be seen or heard. They are watching. This is particularly valuable in personal relationships, negotiations, meetings, or any high-stakes environment. When you are silent, people reveal themselves more quickly. You begin to notice inconsistencies in stories, changes in tone and micro-expressions that others overlook. You can gauge sincerity, detect lies, recognize manipulation, or sense someone's discomfort, all because you're paying attention, not participating in the noise. Even within yourself, silence helps you observe your own thoughts. You become more aware of your triggers, your reactions, and the stories you tell yourself. This inner observation creates self-awareness, the foundation of emotional intelligence and maturity. Without silence, these insights are often drowned out by distraction and constant mental chatter. Silence also removes the need for external validation. When you're focused on observing rather than performing, you detach from the urge to prove something to others. Instead, you gain real understanding about people, about life, and about yourself. You stop guessing and you start knowing. Many of the wisest and most successful people in the world have mastered the art of silence because they understand that the most powerful person in the room is often the one who listens more than they speak and watches more than they move. Observation gives you perspective, and perspective gives you an advantage. All of this begins with silence. One of the most underrated powers of silence is its ability to protect your energy. Every word you speak, every argument you engage in, every unnecessary conversation you entertain, it all costs energy. And in a world where we're constantly overstimulated by notifications, conversations, demands, and opinions, energy has become a precious currency. The more you speak, the more you leak. The more you stay silent, the more you conserve. Silence acts as a barrier, a form of energetic self-defense. It stops you from getting dragged into meaningless debates, gossip, drama, or emotional conflicts that don't serve your growth. It helps you disengage from things that don't align with your purpose. Because not every comment deserves a reply, and not every situation requires your input. When you stay silent, you reclaim the energy that would have been wasted on things that don't matter in the long run. This doesn't mean you isolate yourself or shut people out. It means you become intentional about when and how you speak. It means you understand the difference between responding and reacting. Speaking out of habit, ego, or emotion is draining. Speaking with purpose is empowering. Silence also strengthens your presence. When you stop oversharing and start observing, people begin to notice the shift in you. You become more composed, more selective, and more mysterious. That mystery protects your energy even more, because now people can't easily read you, provoke you, or pull you into their emotional chaos. Your silence becomes your shield. On a deeper level, silence gives your mind and spirit the quiet it craves. It becomes a sanctuary, a place where you can recharge without the noise of the outside world interfering. In those quiet moments, you reconnect with yourself. You let go of the pressure to constantly be on, and you step back into alignment with your inner peace. So many people today feel tired not because they do too much physically, but because they speak too much emotionally. They give away pieces of themselves in every interaction. Silence closes that leak. It creates boundaries without needing to say a word. It protects your peace, guards your purpose, and keeps your energy aligned with what truly matters. In the chaos of modern life, our minds are often flooded with noise. Constant information, opinions, stress, and responsibilities. It's no wonder so many people struggle with mental fog, anxiety, or indecision. Silence, however, offers a powerful antidote. It is the stillness that allows your mind to breathe, to reset, and to see clearly again. When you are silent, especially intentionally, you create space for your thoughts to settle. Imagine your mind like a snow globe, shaken all day long by external stimulation. Every ping of a message, every conversation, every decision. It all stirs up your thoughts. But when you enter silence, the snow begins to fall. Things become clearer. You start to see what's at the core. Silence helps organize your mind. You begin to separate what matters from what doesn't. You gain insight into your own thinking patterns. What was once overwhelming becomes manageable, because silence turns down the volume on the world, so you can turn up the volume on your intuition. That inner voice, the one that gets drowned out by busyness, finally has a chance to speak. Clarity is not just about thinking clearly, but about seeing life clearly, your goals, your values, your priorities. And you can't do that if you're always talking, always listening to others, or always distracted. Silence is a discipline that trains your mind to become more focused, more intentional, and more aware. When your mind is calm, your decisions are sharper, your creativity flows, your productivity increases, your stress decreases. In fact, many high-performing individuals, leaders, artists, athletes, and thinkers deliberately carve out moments of silence each day, not because they're avoiding the world, but because they need clarity before they face it. Silence becomes their strategy for staying aligned and making high-quality decisions. Mental clarity also improves your emotional intelligence. When your mind is quiet, you're better able to analyze your emotions, understand why you feel a certain way, and choose your responses wisely. Silence lets you observe your inner world without judgment, which is the first step toward mastering it. So, silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's the presence of clarity. It's a mental cleanse. A reset button, a moment to come home to yourself and remember what truly matters without the distractions of the outside world pulling you in every direction. Silence in conversation is not a weakness, it's a strategy. In fact, the most skilled communicators know that when used wisely, silence can be more powerful than words. In discussions, debates, or even casual conversations, silence gives you a significant psychological edge. It allows you to maintain control of the flow, gauge the intentions of others, and influence without force. When you remain silent, especially when others expect a reaction, you create a sense of unpredictability. People are often uncomfortable with silence, and in that discomfort, they start talking more, sometimes saying things they didn't plan to. They reveal more about their thoughts, feelings, and intentions, simply because you gave them the space to fill the void. This is particularly useful in negotiation. conflict resolution, or when you're trying to understand someone's true motives. Silence also gives you time to process what's being said. Instead of rushing to respond or defend yourself, you can analyze the situation calmly. This prevents you from saying things impulsively and allows you to craft a more intelligent, measured reply, if a reply is even necessary. In many cases, silence is your reply, and it can be louder than any words you might offer. People tend to equate silence with confidence. When you speak only when necessary, others begin to pay more attention to what you say, because they know you're not just talking for the sake of it. Your words carry weight. Your presence becomes more commanding, not because you're dominating the conversation, but because you're mastering it through strategic quiet. This approach also neutralizes manipulative behavior. Some people use pressure, guilt, or urgency to provoke quick responses. Silence interrupts that pattern. It gives you time to think clearly and keeps you from being emotionally hijacked. You regain control of the interaction by simply choosing not to react immediately. And let's not forget, silence can be disarming. When someone expects conflict and you offer calm, it throws them off balance. It diffuses aggression. It puts you in the driver's seat. You're not being silent because you don't have anything to say. You're being silent because you've already said enough, or because you're choosing wisdom over noise. So, whether you're having a difficult conversation, setting a boundary, or simply observing, silence gives you a powerful tool. It lets you lead without overpowering, influence without arguing, and win without ever having to raise your voice. In a world obsessed with speed, fast answers, fast communication, fast decisions, deep thinking is becoming a rare skill. But silence brings it back to life. When you step into silence, you step away from noise, distraction, and surface-level thinking. You give your mind the chance to explore ideas more fully, to connect dots, and to uncover insights that can't be reached through constant activity or small talk. Deep thinking doesn't happen when your brain is juggling dozens of inputs at once. It happens in stillness. It happens in solitude. When you are silent, your mind finally has room to wander, creatively, critically, and meaningfully. You begin to ask bigger questions. Why am I doing this? Is this aligned with my values? What are the long-term consequences of this choice? These are the kinds of reflections that build self-awareness, wisdom, and vision. This is why some of the greatest thinkers, philosophers, and innovators in history valued silence. They deliberately sought solitude, not because they were avoiding people, but because they needed uninterrupted space to think deeply. Silence becomes a container for reflection, contemplation, and the kind of mental work that leads to breakthroughs, both personally and professionally. In silence, you also begin to understand your own mind. You notice your recurring thoughts, your mental habits, and the stories you tell yourself. You gain the ability to challenge those thoughts, reframe them, or let go of the ones that no longer serve you. Without silence, this internal work becomes nearly impossible, because you're constantly distracted by the opinions and voices of others. Furthermore, deep thinking is the foundation of wise decision-making. When you give yourself time to reflect in silence, your decisions are less impulsive and more aligned with your long-term goals. You don't get caught up in the urgency of the moment. You see the bigger picture. You anticipate consequences, and you act from a place of clarity rather than confusion. In this way, silence isn't just about peace, it's about power. It gives you access to your own intelligence on a deeper level. You stop relying solely on outside advice because you've built the ability to think things through for yourself. Your thoughts become more original, more purposeful, and more aligned with who you truly are. So when you carve out space for silence, you're not just taking a break, you're activating the part of your mind that can lead, innovate, and transform. Words are powerful. They can build or break, heal or hurt. Once spoken, they cannot be taken back. How many times have you said something in anger, frustration, or haste and later wished you could undo it? That's where silence becomes a form of wisdom. It acts as a filter between your emotions and your expression, giving you time to consider the consequences before you speak. In moments of stress or emotional intensity, the instinct to speak can be overwhelming. You might feel compelled to defend yourself, argue, correct someone, or express your feelings immediately. But silence gives you an opportunity to pause. That pause is everything. In it, you gather your thoughts. You assess the situation more rationally. You ask yourself, is this worth saying? Will this help or will it harm? Am I reacting or am I responding? This self-control doesn't mean you're suppressing your voice or your truth. It means you're choosing the right time, the right tone, and the right words. It means you understand that not every thought deserves to be spoken aloud. Some things are better left unsaid. Others are better said later, when emotions have cooled and clarity has returned. Silence is also a form of protection, not just for others, but for yourself. When you speak impulsively, you risk damaging relationships, your reputation, or even your self-respect. Words can escalate conflicts, deepen misunderstandings, or reveal things you later wish you'd kept private. But silence helps you avoid those traps. It keeps you aligned with your higher self, calm, grounded, and in control. In arguments especially, silence can prevent a spiral. It can de-escalate tension and give both sides the space to reflect. Sometimes, by simply not responding to provocation, you preserve your peace and keep the situation from turning into a full-blown conflict. Your silence becomes a statement of maturity. It shows that you're not ruled by ego or emotion. You're guided by awareness and purpose. Even in everyday interactions, practicing silence helps you communicate more meaningfully. You learn to think before you speak. You weigh your words. You speak less, but with more impact. And in doing so, you protect not just your relationships, but your integrity. Because at the end of the day, silence can't be misquoted, and words left unspoken can't come back to haunt you. There is a quiet power in someone who doesn't feel the need to constantly speak. You've probably noticed it. Those individuals who walk into a room and immediately command attention, not by what they say, but by how they carry themselves. That's presence. And one of the most overlooked ways to cultivate it is through silence. When you are silent, people notice. They wonder what you're thinking, what you're observing, what you might say if you chose to speak. That mystery draws people in. It creates a sense of gravity around you. In contrast, someone who constantly talks, overshares, or dominates conversation often ends up being tuned out, no matter how valuable their words might be. But the one who speaks selectively, their words land with weight. Their silence makes people listen. Silence communicates that you are self-assured. It shows you're not trying to prove anything or beg for attention. You're comfortable with your own company, your own thoughts, your own presence. And that kind of quiet confidence is magnetic. People are drawn to those who don't need external validation to feel secure. When you don't rush to fill every silence with words, you show that you're in control, not just of your voice, but of your emotions, your mind, and your space. This also applies in leadership. Leaders who listen more than they speak are seen as thoughtful, intentional, and wise. Their silence gives others space to contribute, while also signaling that when they do speak, it's going to matter. This creates trust and respect. Similarly, in personal relationships, silence used with awareness creates a deeper presence. It shows you're really there, not just waiting for your turn to talk. Silence also enhances nonverbal communication. Your eye contact, body language, posture, and energy. When you don't rely on words, you begin to develop a stronger sense of presence through how you show up, not just what you say. You learn to be comfortable in stillness, which radiates calm strength in a world that is always rushing, always noisy. Ultimately, presence isn't about being loud. It's about being grounded. It's about being fully in the moment, fully in yourself, and fully aware of your power, and silence is the gateway to that. It centers you, sharpens your awareness, and allows your energy to speak before your words ever do. In a world overflowing with noise, digital noise, emotional noise, societal pressure, inner peace has become one of the most valuable states of being. And yet, it's also one of the rarest. We chase happiness, achievement, and validation, thinking they'll bring us peace, but often overlook the one thing that consistently leads us there: silence. Silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's the presence of stillness. It is a sacred space where the mind can unwind, the heart can settle, and the soul can breathe. When you regularly create time for silence, you step out of the world's chaos and into your own sanctuary. This is where you find clarity, healing, and a sense of grounding that external circumstances can't shake. Inner peace isn't something you stumble upon, it's something you cultivate, moment by moment, through your choices. And choosing silence is a powerful act of self-respect. It means you are no longer willing to let the outside world dictate your inner state. You are no longer addicted to noise, validation, or reaction. You're choosing your peace over proving a point. You're choosing reflection over reaction. That's maturity. That's strength. Silence is especially healing in times of emotional pain, confusion, or overwhelm. When you're silent, you're able to listen to your inner self, the part of you that knows what you need, what hurts, what's unresolved. This kind of deep listening is impossible in the middle of constant stimulation. But in silence, buried emotions rise gently to the surface, and you begin to process them rather than suppress them. Silence also reconnects you to the present moment. Most anxiety lives in the future, and most sorrow lives in the past. But silence brings you into the now, the only place peace can exist. Whether it's sitting quietly with your thoughts, walking in nature, meditating, or simply turning off the noise for a while, these silent spaces reconnect you to your center. They remind you that peace is not something to be earned, it's something to return to. Over time, as silence becomes a regular part of your life, your nervous system begins to relax. Your mind becomes less reactive. You stop overthinking every little thing. You become more emotionally balanced, and even in the middle of chaos, you find that there's a stillness inside you that can't be disturbed. That is the power of silence. It not only protects your peace, it builds it from the inside out. In a noisy world that constantly demands our attention, our opinions, our reactions, silence becomes a radical act of strength. It is not weakness, it is not retreat, it is wisdom, it is discipline, it is power. When you choose silence, you're not disconnecting from life. You're connecting more deeply with it. You're learning to hear what most people miss, your own voice, your own intuition, your own truth. In silence, you observe more, reflect more, understand more. And when you do choose to speak, your words are sharper, your actions are clearer, your presence is felt more deeply. So don't be afraid to be the quiet one in the room. Don't feel pressured to fill every gap with sound. Let others rush to be heard, while you master the art of listening, watching, and knowing, because in silence you don't just find peace, you find power.